What's up, y'all? This is my first reading log video. I'm going to try and make one of these every month. We'll see how it goes. And I just wanted to talk about the books I've read over the past month. All of them are comic books because I'm a nerd. But I really wanted to start making these partially for the creative outlet that it gives me to talk about these books and like the craft that goes into them. I find really interesting. I'm trying to write and make my own comic books right now. So I love just talking game, I guess. But also these videos of other people finding books or just showing them off or like showing their haul or reviewing them is how I find new comic books to read. I feel like I've watched maybe like, I don't know, like a year's worth of people talking about comic books. So I'm hoping to add my own, and then maybe I can show you guys some books you ain't seen before. For these like mini reviews or whatever that I'm doing, I'm going to have a scale. It's going to be 0 to 5. 0 is going to be like, I didn't finish it. I have no idea how it ends. Was not working for me at all. Which happens really, really rarely, but you know, sometimes it does. 1 out of 5 is like, didn't like it, wasn't for me. Doesn't mean that it's bad. I'm not trying to say it's bad. It just didn't connect with me in any way. 2 out of 5 is like, there was some good stuff in it, but it didn't totally stick the landing, or there was some weirdness going on that didn't totally vibe with me. 3 out of 5 is like, this is solid. I don't know if I'd recommend it to anybody, but it was like good. You know what I mean? 4 out of 5 is like, I would recommend it to certain people. You know what I'm saying? It's not like a give it to everybody, but to certain people who share like these kind of niche interests going on in the book, it's an auto recommend. 5 out of 5 is a banger masterpiece that everybody should read. Which, you know, there's not a ton of, but I have a lot. I feel like I've read a lot of books that I feel that way about. So yeah, again, none of these is like to dunk on a book that I think is bad. I'm never trying to like shoot down somebody else's stuff. These books take forever to make. I don't want it to be like that. This is just how I feel about it. Totally subjective, you know? There's going to be books on here that you see and you're like, wow, I can't believe you didn't like that. What a dunce. This book's a banger. And you're probably right. But that's how it's going to be because this is my video. Yeah, let's go ahead and get to the books. First book is 40 Seconds by Jeremy Hahn and Christopher Mitten. This is a sci-fi book from Dark Horse. I really like it as a one and done. It is, I think they thought they were going to get another book based on how this one ends, but I think this is like a beautiful, like, single sitting read. It's a sci-fi book. There is this team of scientists / explorer types, and they work for some government-y organization where it's their job to go through these gates, right? So there's these passageways they're supposed to go through. Once you get through one, you end up in a new world. Then you have to find the next gate. And eventually, if they go through enough of these gates, they'll find whatever goal it is that they're looking for in this book. Some real highlights in this book, I think, are the characters. The way it's written makes it so that like he kind of just drops you in on like their life, and I find them all very believable. Like I think it works. I think their team dynamic really works, which is not easy to do. You know, it feels very organic. I really like the art in this book, too. I think it's a great example of the art matching the tone of the story and those kind of working together beautifully. You get a lot of kind of these panels where it's just like shots of the environment and then like moving through it. It's great. I think that this book, I'm kind of surprised I haven't heard of it before. I think it kind of flew under the radar because I think for what it's going for, it's an absolute hit, you know? I would give this one a 4 out of 5, 40 seconds. I mean, if you're into like kind of older sci-fi movies, I feel like this book is a total home run for you. Very good. Up next is Swan Songs by W. Maxwell Prince and all sorts of artists. This is my first time reading W. Maxwell Prince. I know he does Ice Cream Man, but your boy is a wimp, and I do not do anything that seems scary. I don't do horror books at all. And I've heard that kind of leans into it, so I've stayed away from it. But I really like this book. It's an anthology where each story is done by a different artist. So this one here is Martin Simmons. And they're all about the end of something, which, you know, was enough to get me. It's a good gimmick, man. I'm in. I thought this book as a whole is very good. It feels like a smart book, and I feel like sometimes when I'm reading smart books, I feel like it's like going over my head in it, and this was kind of one of those. But the stories were really concise. My favorite one is the one that Felipe Andrade does, which I think is like the third or fourth one. I think that one is like such a banger. But I mean, this book's interesting. I feel like it's very thought-provoking. The art is sick. Like, pretty much all around, the art is really sick. Like, Martin Simmons is crazy. This stuff is so good. Yeah. Yeah, I read this all in one sitting. I couldn't get enough. W. Maxwell Prince's writing, I think, is very... I don't know how you'd say it. It flows really smoothly, I think. Like, the stream of consciousness that the character is going through feels smooth, you know? I feel like sometimes when you get into these books where there's a lot of internal dialogue that he's kind of talking about, it can get a little mixed up, but he kind of flows in and out of it, right? With what other people are saying out loud and then what he's thinking, it all has a very nice flow to it. Yeah, Swan Songs, I think, is very good. I don't know if I'd call it a banger masterpiece, but it's just a little bit like sad and dreary in some parts for me, you know? I think it's objectively very good. I'll give this one a 4 out of 5. But I do think that I can't think that there's anyone who wouldn't get something from reading this book, you know? Very good. Up next is Headlopper 3, The Knights of Venora. My book's a little banged up here. I got it used, as everybody should. A lot of people should get used books, especially if you're starting up like collecting comic books and these like collected editions, man. I think it's the way to do it. And, you know, I wanted to get Headlopper. I got this for like $4 or something like that. It was a little beat up, but I still loved it. I got to read the story for $4. What more can you ask for, you know? Andrew McLean writes and draws this, of course. I feel like you've probably heard of Headlopper. If not, just give it a go, man. I mean, Headlopper is just worth the read. You're all sorts of monsters, you know, very like fantasy barbarian, rolling through whatever monsters Andrew McLean can think up, really. In this book, he does a lot more of these, like, the shadow lines, like the ink in the shadows. I feel like he did that less in previous books. I actually don't know. I did not go back and revisit them. This book was solid. It was solid. I think I like the other two Headlopper books I read better. But, you know, to each their own. In this book, it gives you some backstory, really, for the first time of what Headlopper's like life was before this, how he ended up holding the witch's head, how the witch ended up losing a head. Yeah, and it's them, you know, classic Headlopper adventures. He's bringing around the severed head of the witch. They travel upon this city. He meets characters. Something is coming that only Headlopper can defeat. You know, just classic stuff. Yeah. I think it was solid. I'm not going to write home about it. His art is very cool. This is like... Andrew McLean draws the way I wish I could have drawn when I was, like, younger. Like, I feel like if I got my hands on this book when I was, like, in middle school, this would be, like, my Bible, dude. Like, I would love these Headlopper books. Full of interesting ideas, full of colorful characters. Solid. Headlopper. Read it. If you haven't read it, you're not doing yourself any favors, man. Read the books. Oh, this one I would probably give 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5 for the Knights of Venora. The next book is Bramble. This book is from Humanoids, written by J.D. Morvan and drawn by Nesmo? I think that's how it goes. Where's some names? Yeah, Jean David Morvan. I guess I was giving him a nickname. I do not know Mr. Morvan like that. My apologies. This book, the art is sick. Nesmo is sick. I've never heard of him before. I went on a real binge here where I bought a bunch of Humanoids books because I felt like I finally had like this whole world of European comics I had never heard of. You know, so that was really appealing to me since I've been trying to move away from buying Marvel and DC comics. I tend to like these stories better. They're like independent and like the whole story's in the book, you know? Bramble is it's mostly about this detective who has like a very sad life in this city. It's kind of unclear if this is like past, future, different world. I don't think it ever says explicitly. There's this big lug who comes in from some small town outside. He kills some people. The detective is called in to investigate and gets wrapped up in this kind of like spiritual, mystical mystery inside of this like nasty, futuristic city. This book, I'm gonna be honest, did not do it for me. It's like this guy's life sucks. It sucks so bad. And so you're just watching him go through his life. His like the kid, I don't know if it's his son or like his wife's son doesn't like him. His wife hates him. Everyone at work hates him. This guy's life sucks. And I feel like I couldn't shake that off while I was reading it. I think that the story has like some interesting kind of twists and turns. But I remember thinking about not finishing this book, which is so sad because the art is so sick. The art is so sick. This place, the cities that he's made up, is really cool. I feel like there's lots of cool ideas in this book. It just really didn't do it for me. You know, so this book, I did get it, of course, and this is the oversized hardcover. Can't really see it. It's got a little ribbon here. It will look nice on the shelf, but if I'm being honest, this did not do it for me. So Bramble, for me, I'm going to give, let's say, 2 out of 5 feels right. Up next is Hexagon Bridge by Richard Blake, doing the writing and the art. You know we love a writer-artist combo. And this guy, I mean, the art and the writing are both stellar, I think. This book is, again, feels like a very smart book. This one, I felt like I couldn't figure out what was happening until like halfway through, like understanding what we're dealing with. The gist of the story is there's this girl, she is clairvoyant, she has like certain gifts, and her parents were cartographers mapping out this like digital dimension called the Bridge. And her parents went out on this mission. It's kind of, you know, a dangerous mission that they go on, and they don't return. So she, who was very young when they left on their trip, she gets trained up for a good chunk of her life so that she can also go into the bridge and map it out, but also maybe find her parents. In order to do this, she has a robot best friend, homie, who goes to map it out with her. There's a lot of artificial intelligences going on in this book, a lot of robots. The art for the dimension, the bridge that they go to, is beautiful. Really, the art in this whole book is so sick. The way it's colored is also, like, I feel like adds so much to the tone of the book. But everything is so, like, clean and precise and has this, like, quiet, serene feeling about it, which I think is very interesting to put into this world that's, like, digital, right? Like, this other dimension is supposed to be very hard for people to get through because it's constantly changing and shifting, and so you have to be like an AI to be able to adapt to it. And I think that's such an interesting idea, to give it this natural, serene beauty to a place that's supposed to be, you know, inorganic in its nature. This book is, I mean, look at this, man. It's beautiful. Colors are beautiful. I really like all the interactions that happen between the girl and the robot, but this book was kind of confusing for me, to be honest. I'll probably get the next one, but I'm not, like, all the way bought in on this story just yet. I am curious to see where it goes. I think that Hexagon Bridge by Richard Blake will get a 3 out of 5. Up next is Deathbed by Joshua Williamson and Riley Rossmo. So I heard the announcement for the new Daniel Warren Johnson comic book coming out, The Moon is Following Us, and I heard he was doing it with Riley Rossmo, and so I said I better get myself familiar. I went on to In-Stock Trades and bought a couple of books of his, so I think there's 1 or 2 more drawn by him on here. This book's kind of zany. It's very much like a 90-minute like movie is how it feels, you know? Like something that you'd pick up from Blockbuster back in the day, and I don't know. Our family used to do that a lot. So we'd like pick up a movie, watch on a Friday night, eat pizza. This feels like one of those books. The gist of the story is we have our main man, Antonio, who is the sickest, most main character dude of all time, right? He is getting old. He is dying. He goes to send out for a writer. And our writer is this girl here, Valentine Richards, who's kind of, she's a writer who's not given up on the trade, but it feels like she has lost her creative oomph, right? It feels like she's wasting her life away writing stories about other people. But this job comes across her. She doesn't want to do it, but she ends up doing it because this guy seems rich and maybe interesting. And, turns out that there's more going on here than just this old man dying. They're very early on attacked by mummies, mummy ninjas. and then it kind of gets more complicated from there, kind of retracing steps through this guy's life. I guess I shouldn't show the pictures where there's naked people on it, huh? Yeah, I mean, the book's pretty cool. Art is sick. You can definitely tell why Daniel Warren Johnson would want to work with Riley Rasmo. I feel like his art has a lot of motion to it. He has these very cartoony, kind of like, I don't know how to say it. It's very silly and fun, So, like, even when crazy stuff is going on, it's still, like, pretty lighthearted, I'd say. This book, the one I got, like, some of the pages are kind of blurry and weird, which wasn't ideal. I don't know if that's an every copy thing, so maybe look out for that. This book was cool, It was cool. It was good fun. I'm not going to, not going to write home about it. I probably will not read it again, but I think I am going to keep it in the collection. Fun, colorful, quick and easy read. Deathbed. Coming this summer. No. I'd probably give Deathbed a 3 out of 5, even though I had a good amount of fun reading it. I don't know if I would recommend it generally. Next is The Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos by James Tynion, Tate Bramble, and Isaac Goodhart? Yeah, Isaac Goodhart. This book is definitely a teen book, which I didn't totally know going in. I bought it because I thought this cover was sick. I think with just the coloring and all that. This is definitely a teen book. This is definitely a very, I don't want to say this the wrong way. It's a very LGBTQ heavy read, and I don't know if that means it's exactly for me. Not because the characters are doing a lot of that, but it just doesn't feel like maybe it was written for me. The art was pretty good. I actually really like the design of all the characters. I like the thick lines that they work with on a lot of this stuff. It's cool. I would recommend that people read this book generally. I feel like I missed the age where I would have been into a book like this. It's like a very, very teen book. Yeah. Didn't really do it for me, but I don't think that it is low quality. I think the art's really good. It seems like there's a lot of passion behind the storytelling. Just was not exactly for me. So Christopher Chaos, for that, I would give a 2 out of 5. Gave out this real thick book, though. I haven't seen a trade paperback this thick. It's 6 issues, which is crazy. Yeah, Chris Chaos. Up next, we have Nocta. This is book 2. Book 1 I really liked, and then I read book 2. I'm still reading book 3 right now, but I don't even know if I'm going to get through it. I feel like this series lost a lot of steam for me. It's by Scott Snyder and Tony S. Daniel. Who's sick. He's a very good artist. I also like Scott Snyder, generally speaking, but I feel like this book kind of lost steam from the first one. If you don't know, the pitch for Nocta is that one day the sun disappears, right? There's this darkness that covers the entire earth, and the darkness starts to change people. If you're in the dark for too long, you turn into this monster. Right, so all the animals start turning into monsters, people start turning into monsters, and they start to collect in these towns that have lights on all the time. They have all these crazy like neon signs and like spotlights and all this crazy stuff. And our main character is a trucker that moves between these different cities. That's like the gist of it. I don't want to say too much because, you know, I think it's always fun going in blind. And especially to a book like this, like Scott Snyder and Tony Daniels, them working together is never going to be bad, you know? Like, there's too much talent, too much quality for it to ever not be good. But this book, I feel like it kind of loses its momentum. That in that first trade paperback, like, it felt so nonstop. Like, the action was coming in, it felt so exciting. And reading these ones, it feels like they're doing like a TV show, you know? Have you ever been watching like one of those cable TV shows and it's like, oh, they're just trying to get me to the next episode. You know what I'm saying? They're not even going to attempt to move this stuff along. They're just like trying to get me to the next one, trying to get you to stick around. And this one feels like that a little bit. We get some point of view from the other characters because the first trade is all Val's point of view. So you hear from the other characters, and they're not like, you know, they're not interesting, but I just didn't care about them as much as I cared about Val, you know? And maybe that's, you know, to my own fault here. I mean, it probably is. But I don't know. I'm probably out. I think this is the last Nocta book I'm buying. It was the third one. I don't even know if I'm going to get all the way through it. It definitely has those, like, horror elements in it. So if you like that, you'll probably like this book. It makes me sad to say, but Nocta for me, I don't know. This second and third book, it might be a 1 out of 5. It might be like a strong 1, like almost a 2. But I did not enjoy it this much, which makes me so sad. Next book on the list is Petrol Head. This book is sick. This is by Rob Williams and Pi Par. My copy, like, just disintegrated. Like, it just fell apart out of nowhere, so bear with me. This one I didn't even buy used. I bought this one brand new and it still fell apart on me. The elevator pitch on Petrol Head is there are these robot drivers called Petrol Heads, and they are racers, right? So they do these, like, crazy races through the city, kind of a post-apocalyptic city, so everybody's living in this dome, and they watch these exciting races happen. The art is nuts in this book, dude. Like, look at this. Look at this. They're like, it feels like it's a 3-dimensional truck here. Like, these feel like Hot Wheels, like I'm watching them, but they're at actual size. This book is sick. It follows a Petrol Head named Petrol Head, which is not typical. The Petrol Heads have been retired. There is no longer racing in the city. And it kind of follows our Petrol Head around as he adjusts to life afterwards, where he's not as welcome. The city is kind of split up into these different districts where people can live, and the robots and machines live somewhere else because they make a lot of exhaust and the air isn't as clean, so they keep them separate. We meet a scientist and his daughter. The scientist is working on something that could clean the air outside of the dome, that, you know, get rid of the stuff that makes it so unlivable. And their paths cross, and they run away from a big, bad, scary robot guy. I don't want to give too much away. Honestly, you should read Petrol Head. This first book, you should read this. Whoever you are, this is sick. It's action-packed. I feel like it has good sense of humor about it. The art is beautiful. It's sick. I think Petrol Head, at least this first trade paperback, is a definite 5 out of 5. You might not love it as much as I do, but you'll definitely like it. Up next, we have Batman Universe by Brian Michael Bendis and drawn by Nick Darrington. I got the hardcover version of this. It was pretty reasonably priced. It's like $13, $12, something like that. And I bought this book because Nick Darrington drew in it. I have read some of his Doom Patrol. I follow him on Instagram. He is a spectacular artist, and I couldn't believe that there was this like book of his that I hadn't heard of. This book is Batman. He runs into a scheme that the Riddler is pulling off, but it all seems off, and it seems like there's something else deeper going on here. So he chases him down. He runs into, I don't want to spoil it, but there are other villains involved. You get some time with some other superheroes in universe. It's just fun, you know? It's not going to change your life. But I think that this book is very fun. It was, again, a single sitting read, which I love books like that. You know? This feels like it could have been one of those like animated movies that DC pumps out, and I would have loved it, you know? I think that it's an interesting personality that Brian Michael Bendis gives Batman. It is definitely not like your typical Batman, I don't think. He's kind of early on in the game. I don't believe there's any Robins in this book, so it's that early on. It's fun. It's lighthearted. The art's really good. You won't be disappointed. Batman Universe, I'd probably give a 3 out of 5. Fun, easy read, and not too expensive, which never hurts. Up next, we have Inside the Mind of Sherlock Holmes by Cyril Leone and Benoit Dahan. We'll see if that's right. Now this book is sick, dude. I grew up, me and my mom used to listen to lots of Sherlock Holmes stories, like audiobooks and stuff. I'm a big Sherlock Holmes guy. And this is just like, just a single mystery of Sherlock Holmes. You get a lot of that. When it says Inside the Mind of Sherlock Holmes, it means it for real. You get to see a lot of the inner workings of his head, beautifully illustrated. The art in this book is unreal. It must have taken 40 years to draw this stuff. He does all sorts of really interesting panel layouts. We're like, this is the newspaper with the hands on the side. Like, are you kidding me, bro? He's sick. The art is incredible, and honestly is what makes the book. The mystery is good. It's adapted from a real Sherlock Holmes book, I believe. Arthur Conan Doyle? I actually don't know. I assume so. But it's so cool to bounce around in his head. They have all these little Sherlocks moving around. Every time you get a clue, it zooms in on his process, right? So you can keep up with Sherlock Holmes, which is so tricky to do. I feel like it's the real catch with writing a character like Sherlock Holmes. It's that he's smarter than everybody and he's supposed to see things that we don't. How do you make that visually engaging and not just a guy, jumping to conclusions all the time that he's just right? The pace of the book is pretty fast, which I like. I'm a very quick reader. So I feel like it works really well for me in that sense. If you're a quick reader, this has so much to chew on as you're reading through this book. But this would be the kind of book that I would have loved to have read as a teenager. I feel like this is sick. It goes into some stuff that's a little bit, I don't know, violent and indecent. And, some messed up stuff happens. Still Sherlock Holmes. He's still doing drugs and stuff. But I wouldn't feel bad about giving this a high schooler, I think this is a easy Sherlock Holmes read that anybody can jump in on and feel like they, have everything they need to follow through with the story. I really like this book. I think I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Even though the art is incredible, even though the mystery is tight, I feel like it'd be wrong to call this a true, I feel like I can't call it a banger masterpiece. This is a banger, though. I do like this book. Forget that. We're giving it a 5 out of 5. Everyone should read this book. If you like Sherlock Holmes, it's in the bag, bro. This is it. Read it. Next, I read Castle in the Stars, Book 1 and 2 by Alex Alice. This book is about a young boy. His parents are scientists. His mom goes on a mission to investigate ether, which is, oh, look at that, public library, let's go. Investigate ether, which is the substance that's just outside of the atmosphere, and they think they can use it for travel, essentially. It's supposed to be this super fuel. So his mom goes up in a hot air balloon. It takes place in the 1800s in Bavaria, I want to say. And the story kind of follows this father and son because the mother goes out to investigate ether and mysteriously disappears in her hot air balloon. After some time, the boy is very smart and he's still very interested in all these things. And his dad is still a scientist. He goes, "You silly boy, you'll never go into space. You'll never be in the sky. Just shut up and do your work." And he says, "I miss my mom. You'll never be her dad." And then luckily some villains intervene so that they can bond instead of just slowly grow apart, I guess. But these villains come in to threaten them. They get a letter from a mysterious man saying that he found their mom's, or his mom's, notebook with lots of important information. So they travel to this castle in the mountains to go and do further research. I don't want to say too much. You know me, I'm a big supporter of going in blind to books. I mean, the art in this book is insane as well. I think it's all watercolors, but this Alex Alice guy is nutty. It's these like beautiful skies and landscapes, and then he's so good at characters and at like everybody's feeling something different in all these scenes. There's some that lean a little bit more cartoony, but there's so much like acting in this book as well. I feel like this book is the closest to, and I know that they say this on all sorts of books, they always try and get you with this, but it has a very Ghibli feel to it for me. It is very wholesome. It's like a true adventure, and it's so imaginative. It's so fun. This takes place like on our world, but he's like, we don't know what's out in space, and he adds his own personal touch to it, and it turns into this like beautiful tale of like a real adventure, like a real journey. I feel like a lot of books do action and a lot of books do these like epics, but they don't have that like feel of an adventure, you know? And this one does. I have read the first 2 books. There are 4 of these size books. I got all these online, used. Obviously, I had the library sticker. And I think these books are a great way to read this. They're a little bit oversized. You know, European comics are bigger than us, are bigger than ours, at least wider. I think that this is so fun. This is a great book for that like all ages category. I feel totally comfortable giving this to a kid if they'd want to read it too. I think it's beautiful. Castle in the Stars, big recommend. I'm giving it a 5 out of 5, baby. This thing is a masterpiece banger, at least in the first 2 books. We'll see how the last 2 end, huh? Up next is Sarah by Garth Ennis and Steve Epting. This book, this is the deluxe hardcover, sold by TKO Studios. I love it when they do this, when they have like the covers with the hole in it to show you the full image. This is about a sniper in World War II, I want to say. I actually have no idea which World War. But she is at war. There's a lot of fighting against Germans. She fights for Russia. And it's just following Sarah. It's following Sarah in her unit of female snipers, which I believe is like based on a true story, that there was this like unit of female snipers that scared everybody because they were so good. And it's definitely from her point of view, but you get to know her team. You go out with her on certain missions. This story, I think, is very tight. I think it's very clean. Garth Ennis is, you know, a master at writing these things. I know that he is very interested in war. This feels very, like, well-researched. It feels like you're there, you know? He's got all the details right. Steve Epting's art is incredible. Especially, like, this coloring job. I don't know who colored it. Maybe I can check. Elizabeth Brettweiser. This book is beautiful. It's very well done. I'd imagine it took an incredibly long time to make. And then to get this, like, tome of a book, too. I think it's great. I think it's great. This is definitely a war book, and, like, nothing more, nothing less, you know? You get really into Sarah's mindset, how she became this, like, scary sniper. She's definitely the best of her crew, and it kind of talks about what sacrifices she had to make in order to get there. And you follow them through this mission all the way to the end. I have nothing else to say about it, really. It's so nice to read a book that's like so straightforward sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, this has a goal. He just wants you to be with Sarah on this mission, get you into this war, feel like you're there, and you do. And he knocks it out of the park. So if you were into these kind of like war stories, soldier stories, very grounded, very like, this is what it was like there, I can't imagine you wouldn't like this. I would give this a 4 out of 5 just because for me, I always like the more exciting, fanciful, Castle in the Stars type stories, more to a grounded story. But I actually don't think that there's anything wrong with this book. I think it's beautiful. Sarah by Garth Ennis. Up next, we have Faceless and the Family, written and drawn by Matt Lesniewski. And this book did not totally do it for me, which makes me very sad. Matt Lesniewski. I've heard so many interviews with him. He seems like a really cool guy. He's an incredibly talented artist. I wanted to like this book so bad, but I just couldn't do it. It follows Faceless, who used to be involved in some, like, criminal activities before, and because of that, he wants to get a face surgery, a face replacement, so that he can, start anew, right? And he meets some friends along the way, including this guy. I can't really remember his name. And it's kind of his journey on his way to get that face surgery. This book, it feels very like, I don't know. I can't tell what this book exactly is going for. It never meshed right with me. It felt weird the whole time I was reading it, and I went the whole way through it because I thought, maybe that it would like tie it all up. It has a lot of creative ideas. This world that he's in is really cool and interesting, but I don't know. I didn't care. I couldn't lock in with these characters. I didn't understand their goals. I didn't understand why they were friends. It didn't seem they like just walk up and they're like, we're friends now, and then that's it. Which I guess is like wholesome, and maybe I'm just, a jaded old man and thinking that could happen. But it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Never meshed right. And, maybe it's just a different style of storytelling that he's using that's not for me. However, I would recommend that lots of people try this book out. I think that he is a very gifted creator, and lots of people out there I'm sure like this book. Just wasn't for me. I'm going to give this one a 2 out of 5. Up next is 8 Outcast by Raphael Albuquerque and Mike Johnson. This book is, I don't know. What I wanted this book to be is what 40 Seconds was. Raphael Albuquerque's art is very, very good. I feel like the story and the mystery is interesting for like the first third, and then once you figure out the direction we're going in, it is, I don't know. I did not find it compelling. I'll say it that way. We have this guy who's sent into this separate dimension called the Meld. He gets left in the ship, and he has a mission, but he has memory problems, so he's trying to figure it out. He runs into these people in the Meld, and they have this kingdom, and there's a king, and there's rebels, and he's found by the rebels, and so now he has to fight the king. And it does this, like, cutting back and forth between his life before he gets sent on this mission and his life in the mission as he's gaining his memory back. Which, just off of that, I feel like that sounds like a really interesting, like, sci-fi book, but I don't think this book totally held it together. Raphael Albuquerque, I will read many more of his books because he's a spectacular artist. But this one didn't totally do it for me. So for 8, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Next, I read Richard Stark's Parker by Darwin Cook. This is the complete collection, so this is a thick, thick boy. I read this when I was on my honeymoon, and so this is a thick guy. This takes a lot to get through. I don't want to say it like it's a bad thing. I loved having this much to read through of it, to be honest. Darwin Cook's art is spectacular. It is very noir, I guess is the term you'd use for it. Parker is this kind of like free agent in the heisting world. It is like following him after a job went wrong, right? He returns to the city. He wants to find the guy who double-crossed him and put him into this situation. And then it kind of carries on from there. That's the first story in this book has that. Because this has like, I don't know, 8 or 9 different ones. This is all of it. This is all of Parker. That's the first story. It's all done in this kind of monotone style. As you go from story to story, the color changes, but the style always holds true. Darwin Cook's art is sick. I wish that there was some kind of animated show with this kind of style that I could watch. I think he's incredible. Parker, the character, I think is a very interesting guy, because at first you think, oh, this is like some, or at least I thought, that this is some like macho 60s version of what a true man is supposed to be, where this guy just shows up. For the first story, he literally just beats everybody up and is like using people for the first, like, I don't know, like 60 pages. But I think as you go on, Parker, the character, is definitely more interesting than that. I think he has layers. I think that he's more than just like this caricature of like, I don't know, like criminal James Bond, where he's smarter than everybody, he's stronger than everybody. Something that really threw me off in this book, and wow, right as I turned to the page, this guy is not afraid to inflict violence upon women. It was so jarring to see him. There's multiple situations where he is like punching girls, and like you don't realize how not used to that you are. Like I didn't realize that maybe there was no book before this where, well, I've read books where there are men and women fighting, but never where he's clearly in the driver's seat of it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a fight. Like, he's just attacking people because he's stronger than everybody he runs into. At the beginning of this, I was not totally in, but by the time I made it through the first couple stories, I was totally hooked. I think that my favorite of the stories is the one called... it's the one where they go in to rob a whole town. I think that one is really good. I can't remember the name of it, but it's towards the end of this book. It's a wild read. It really feels like based in its time too, which I think this is like the 60s, maybe it's earlier than that, but it's very much like in its era, which I think is fun too. So it feels like a little trip into this different world from however long ago. I think Parker is good for anyone who likes noir, anyone who likes a heist story. I think you would like this. But I don't know that it's for everyone. I really enjoyed it. I really, really loved it. And I think that this is nothing less than like a masterwork from Darwin Cook here. But I could totally see it being a lot for people. It's really... The violence is not like fun. Like when somebody is hurt or somebody gets shot, it is not fun and cool. It's like, that hurt, that guy died. You know what I mean? But I kind of like that tone. I like the change up. I like having variety in the comics that I'm reading and how they do that. So for Parker, I'm going to give it like a 5 out of 5. I would give it a low 5 if we're, splitting hairs here. But I do think that this is a masterwork. Up next, I have the hardcover for Death or Glory by Rick Remender and drawn by Bengal. It says Prestige Edition. It's the same size as all the other hardcover Rick Remender books. This book was pretty fun. It is about a trucker named Glory, and she lives in this like very small town in the middle of nowhere where everybody does is trucking. Everybody lives at this truck stop. And her dad has cancer, and he needs a new liver, I want to say, something like that. And so she goes off to find the money to try and get him a liver because she does not have insurance or like, they live completely off the grid. Her dad has no like birth certificate, so it's up to her to find a way to save his life. Is her goal, and in order to get that money, she tries to steal it from this criminal group who's attached to her ex-husband, I want to say. I don't want to say too much more than that. This book is action-packed. I think it's, like, the truck chases in here are so rad. Bengal's art is very, very good. I think the colors also add a lot to the story. I don't know if we checked who colors this, but the colors do a lot of work here. Doesn't say. Maybe it was Bengal. I think this book's sick. I'm in the bag for Rick Remender, though. I like a lot of his books. There's very little things from him that I don't like. But I think that this was very much in the vein of like that 90-minute action movie. Cars are driving, things are flipping. You definitely get time with the character and to like feel out these people as characters. But I think this book is at its best when everybody's going 130 miles an hour and everybody's making those quick decisions. It's so fun. It's so fun. This book is so fun. It has a lot of like kind of gross crime elements. Like there's some nasty serial killers and like crime bosses in here that do terrible stuff. So if you're a faint of heart, maybe don't read this one. But if you read Rick Remender books, it's nothing you're not used to. It's fairly grounded, honestly, I feel like, for a Rick Remender book. But yeah, I think it's good. I think it's another one of those books where like it has a clear goal of what it's trying to do and it knocks it out of the park. I would give Death or Glory a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed this book. I'm still in the bag for Rick Remender and will probably be for a long time. Next, I have The World of Black Hammer. This is the library edition. This is volume 4. So this has the stories of Skulldigger and Skeleton Boy and the Unbelievable Unteens. I liked both of the stories contained in here. For people that don't know, this is from the main series of Black Hammer. Jeff Lemire does these offshoot World of stories. And so these books are kind of like anthologies, but they usually only have 2 stories in them. And I gotta say, this Skulldigger story in this book is definitely my favorite of the World of Black Hammer books. Tanchi Zanjik, I want to say is his name, is an incredible artist, and it's a banger, dude. Like, this story has no holes in it. I don't think. I think it's actually perfect. The Skulldigger, Skulldigger is kind of like a Punisher type, where he just goes out and kills villains. He kills a guy in front of this kid. I believe the man, like the very first page is this kid walking out of a subway. This guy shoots his parents, and it shows Skulldigger coming out and killing the guy who just killed this kid's parents in front of him. And the kid is definitely our point of view character. He ends up wanting to, work with Skulldigger and be his sidekick, hence Skeleton Boy. I don't want to say too much more than that. There's involvement with this detective. She's very close to the boy, and she's trying to help him out while all these things are happening. A wild villain also comes in to work against Skulldigger. I really don't want to say too much. You should read this book. This book is sick. The artwork is so beautiful. He has these harsh blacks in all of his stuff. His character work is so good. All of the acting of the characters. Grim Jim, that was his name. Grim Jim is the villain who comes into the rest of this and is very involved in this story. Reading this, I immediately searched up who Tanchi Zanjik was, and I bought Lobster Johnson just off of this book. I think it's so sick. Oh, I skipped the other one. I'm really bearing the lead on this because the other story is a Tyler Crook one, who I also love. Tyler Crook is another fantastic, fantastic artist. He does Unbelievable Unteens. This story was really good. I actually liked it. I think it's one of the stronger ones from the World of Black Hammer series. I think that the characters were all very likable. I don't know if that makes sense. I cared about all the characters. And his art, Tyler Crook's art. I believe that's David Rubin doing the first part of this. This is Tyler Crook's art. It kind of follows this girl. She's a comic book writer, and she writes the Unbelievable Unteens. And then after a visit from a superpowered being, she realizes maybe these stories have more to them than she thought. That's what I'll say for now. Very teenage X-Men kind of book, kind of vibe. I think it's really fun. I think it has some gravitas to it that really grounds the story, which kind of balances out some of the zanier stuff that happens in here. It definitely has nostalgia for the comic books that it's homaging in this book. You can just tell how much love went into this. I think it's very good. Between these 2 stories, this is definitely my favorite volume of the World of Black Hammer. Skulldigger was my favorite, but the Unbelievable Unteens, also a great book. I would give this one I want to say 4 out of 5. Can I give it in the middle? A strong 4, low 5. This book's very, very good. If you're into this World of Black Hammer stuff, I mean, you're probably already through these library editions, or not the library editions, the World of Black Hammer books. I think this is the best one of them, though. Up next, we got Doctor Strange by Mark Waid and Saiz. What was his first name? I'm forgetting now. Jesus Saiz and Javier Pina. This book, I love Doctor Strange. I actually haven't read too much Doctor Strange comics, But the character of Doctor Strange, I've really taken a liking to. So I've been trying to get some more of the modern runs. I'm not really interested in going back and getting all the like really old Doctor Strange stuff. But I read Trad Moore's Doctor Strange book and oh my goodness, the Brian K. Vaughan book that he did with him, and the Donny Cates run. And this one I thought was fun. I think it's really fun. It's definitely like a lower stakes Doctor Strange book, but I kind of like that. I kind of like when they're a little bit more grounded. The art's very good. Mark Waid's writing, I think, is really fun. He is... I just love all the magic stuff. I feel like Doctor Strange, you can do anything and it works really well. And like this first book is like Doctor Strange in space, which I feel like sounds very silly, but it really worked for me. I had a blast. I like Doctor Strange in space. This probably is not like my favorite Doctor Strange books of the ones that I have read, but I think it's a good time. You know, ain't nothing wrong with that. I think there's another volume of this coming out pretty soon. Doctor Strange by Mark Waid. This first volume, I don't know. No, it's not like a complete collection. It's definitely volume 1. I would give this book a high 3 out of 5. I think that this was very fun. I don't know if anyone else is going to enjoy it as much as I did, though. Up next, I have Newburn. I had already read Newburn Volume 1 before, but I reread both of them because the second trade came out. Newburn is a book about this ex-detective who is like a detective but for the mob in New York. So he investigates, you know, he gets all this access to these different crimes and he reports it to all the mob bosses at this kind of like UN for the mob. This is written, I should have said that. This is written by Chip Zdarsky and Jacob Phillips. Jacob Phillips' art is very, very good, like in everything I've read of his. This book reminds me, we used to watch as a family, like, all these detective shows, like Castle, we used to watch NCIS, we used to watch, what else was it? Like The Mentalist, like all these weirdo cop shows. So this definitely struck a chord with me. It's more grounded than those are. I think this book is pretty serious. It takes itself pretty seriously, which I think works for it. The character of Newburn is very interesting. I think it's fun to watch him solve these crimes. He's a smart guy, but kind of like in the Sherlock Holmes book, I think it does a good job of breaking down how he comes to these conclusions. He ends up recruiting this girl who I can't remember her name to work with him, and it's kind of them navigating this world of like working with the police kind of, but working with the mob mostly, and keeping that balance, dealing with all these dangerous figures, and how Newburn kind of leverages his way through this world. It's fun. These 2 volumes, I think, is it. It really ended in a way that made me think that it's done after this. And I think the series is solid, man. Really solid. I would give Newburn a 4 out of 5. If you like, it's like a very modern detective. I hesitate to say noir, but maybe it is. Up next, we have Mindset by Zach Kaplan and John Pearson. This book is about a bunch of college kids. They figure out the way to do mind control, and they use it for an app, which sounds kind of silly, but I thought it was very fun. This is like... I'm trying to think of how you would put the tone of this book. It's definitely through the main point of view character, who I can't remember his name. He suffers from real main character face syndrome. But it's this kid, he's very smart. He goes to the smart college to develop software for apps and things like that. He stumbles into this mind control discovery, and so he starts on this project with his friends to incorporate it with this app. They, of course, get mega successful because they have mind control, and it's very interesting how it kind of follows that thread, you know? Because once you unlock something like that, I feel like it has the potential to be super convoluted really quickly, and I like the way that this follows that convoluted route of this mind control thing. You get a lot of who's using it when, who's using it on what, is he going to use it on this person, who's operating out of their own will. It's very interesting, I think. The art by John Pearson is incredible. Very Martin Simmons-esque, I would say. So if you like his art, you'll probably like this. But the whole book looks like this. It's like this beautiful collage in all of them with all these different mediums. It's great. It's great. This book was a fun read. I wouldn't say it was like my favorite read, but it's a good like one sitting, you know? It's solid. Not going to change your life. I would give Mindset probably a 4 out of 5. Like a low 4. I think that it definitely has parts of it that I don't want to say drag, but feel kind of janky. But I think the way that it ends wraps up in a nice bow for me. Up next, we have Our Bones Dust, written and drawn by Ben Stenbeck. I always want to say Steinbeck. This book is maybe the most imaginative book I have on my list. It is in this semi-grounded, apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic world in the future, whereas on Earth we follow a lot of this kind of like artificial intelligence, like archaeologist, I kind of want to say, who's down on Earth studying different samples of things. We also follow this boy through a lot of it as well. Earth has kind of fallen apart. It's a mess. People hardly speak like coherent English anymore. It's really like broken up. All of them live in these like Mad Max camps where they're barely surviving. The art style that Ben Stenbeck has, this is the first of his I have seen, and his art style I think is incredible and works so well for the tone of the story that he's working with, for the style. If every comic book was drawn in this way, I would have no complaints. It's very creative and imaginative in ways that you don't typically see either. Like, the way that this robot moves around and the design of it is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I've never seen one that looks like it. I've never seen fights quite like this book has in it, between the artificial intelligence and other, like, robots and peoples and savages and all sorts of weird animals you run into. I think that as far as... I think this is a single. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a 2 of this book. But it's like a very tight, very tight, self-contained story. I would recommend this to... I mean, if you've ever liked something that was post-apocalyptic, I think you'd like this. I think it's a very interesting take on that kind of like subgenre of that post-apocalyptic life, one that I definitely haven't seen before, and brought to life in these like brilliant colors with these very clean lines. These characters are interesting. It feels like these people have lived on this planet for a long time. I really couldn't recommend it more. I think that Our Bones Dust is going to get a 5 out of 5 for me. I think everybody should give it a shot. I think it's very interesting. Okay, I know what you're thinking. This is a manga. I'm not a weeb, I swear. This isn't usually what I do. This is actually probably the first manga I've read, like, the full book of ever in my life. Not my thing. But my brother, he gave me this book. He said, listen, I know you do not rock with this, this manga stuff. I know you do not rock with the Japanese comics, but you'll like this one, I swear. And I did. I don't know if I'm sad to admit that, but I think that this first like part of Hell's Paradise, this first story, I'm not going to give you anything because I went into it completely blind, and I think it is the most fun I've had in the first issue of anything. The art's really good. I think that the what it's going for, I'm not going to give you guys anything on this because I hope you all read it blind just like I did. The art's really good. It's a very imaginative story. Our main character he definitely falls into like that manga main character archetype for sure, where of course he has, white hair and he's a little moody. But I had so much fun reading this book. So much fun. So much that I might give another one of these mangas a shot. It's a really well-drawn book. Of course, it's a manga, so it's black and white. Just read through the first part. If you make it through the first part and you're like, that didn't do anything for me, I understand, but I also think you might have one of those stone hearts. I don't know if you have a real heart beating in your chest. I had so much fun reading this book. Hell's Paradise 1. I will definitely be reading Hell's Paradise 2. And we have Kaya, Book 3. If you're not reading Kaya, I don't know what you're doing with your life. It's a very fun series. Book 3 kind of slows down pace-wise from the other 2, but I think is still very, very high quality storytelling. It is written and drawn by Wes Craig of Deadly Class fame, and it's about Kaya and her little brother Jin, who may be the chosen one, might be the answer to all the world's problems. They adventure through this world that Wes Craig has created, this colorful, beautiful world that has all sorts of there's lizard people, there's mutants, there's all sorts of different combinations of people. Human beings are kind of rare. I think Kaya and Jin so far have been the only human beings in the book. I don't know exactly how you'd say it. It's definitely a journey book. There's a little bit of adventure time in this, but I think that this one's way more grown up and completely filled out world. I think that it's fantastic elements build on each other beautifully. The characters are all so lovable and interesting. And every time a character leaves from the story to go on to their own way, I get sad about it. And I was like, oh man, that's it? We don't get 15 more issues with that guy? Kaya is, as always, it's always a strong recommend for me. I think everyone should be reading Kaya. I really do. This gets a 5 out of 5 for me. It's a little slower than the other 2 books, but I think that this is going to make a beautiful hardcover once this is all said and done. Kaya, 5 out of 5, man. Love this book. Next we have Rasputin by Alex Gressian and Riley Rossmo. This is the other Riley Rossmo book I was talking about. His art, as always, is very good. This follows the life of Rasputin. It kind of gives you a glimpse into his life as childhood and how he became the guy that he is now. It does take some of the interest. It takes some liberties with his story, definitely. Where instead of Rasputin being magical somehow, he shoots green lightning out of his hands and brings people back to life, which is kind of crazy. This book the art's amazing. The storytelling methods he uses, I feel like this is overall a very quiet book. Definitely for the first half, it's very quiet. It's a weird book, man. This one's kind of weird. Following some Russian mythology stuff that I didn't know about. Sometimes it feels like this book wants me to know more about Rasputin before I come to this book. But there's some colorful characters in here. He meets some very interesting friends, including this. My favorite one is, I think he's French. He's a French captain in the army that he meets and he travels with for a while. I think that this book has lots of interesting ideas in it, but I still feel like I've yet to read the Rasputin book of my dreams. I feel like he seems like such an interesting character, but sometimes people can get so locked in to the real life stuff that happened with Rasputin that I feel like is getting in the way of telling the story that I want to see. And I don't know if that's right of me to expect them to reinvent this real person in that way. But I think there's some interesting things going on with Rasputin being the chosen one. They don't really actually they might explicitly call him the chosen one in here. But his world of going through and how these people he brings back to life kind of impact him is very interesting. His relationship with those who have already died and he didn't bring back is also very interesting. This takes place mostly with him as a young man, so it's him making big choices about who he's going to end up being that I think is the best part of this book, is kind of seeing the formation of who Rasputin will become. I think is interesting. Yeah, it's cool. There's another book of this. I don't know if I will be getting it. I probably will. I would give this book a 3 out of 5. This is Grizz Grobus by Simon Roy. I loved this book. He writes and draws it. There are 2 separate stories in this book taking place, I believe, on the same world. You get one of this frozen village up in the mountains who try to bring back their robo priest. And then there's another story about a man and a goose That's also very good. There's some magic involved in that one. This story is very charming. It's in this like digest-sized book, which I also think works for it. Honestly, I would say this book is colorful. The characters are very lighthearted and fun. This is a low-stakes story overall, but I think it's beautiful. I have really come to appreciate these low-stakes stories that are just very human and like very connected. And there's some zany stuff going on, but it's about the characters. And it's just like them navigating through this crazy spot that I can't imagine being in. I loved this book. I think that this book is an easy 5 out of 5. I don't want to say too much because I think that the discovery of reading through this book is so like wonderful. Light magical read, 5 out of 5. Graves Grobus. It's sick. Everybody should read it. Last but not least, I read Saga. I'm not really going to get into this. If you look up comic book stuff online, you've heard of Saga. Everybody says it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And to be honest, they're right. This book is sick. Go read Saga. Okay, so that is it for my reading log for what I read in July. I'm going to try and be back and show you guys what I'm reading in August. Hope you liked it. No, I kept them pretty short and sweet, but that's how I like to be recommending books, is to be a little bit blind going in, you know, so you don't get everything revealed before you even give it a shot. If you guys have any recommendations for some comic books or collected editions that I should read, please leave them in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.